After weeks of intense pressure, the Premier has unveiled how Queensland will open up to the rest of the country and the world. Vaccination milestones will guide the road ahead, with the fully vaccinated able to reunite with their families for Christmas and without having to go to quarantine. And our fate is largely in our hands. If vaccination rates speed up, those freedoms will come sooner. Sally Eales begins our coverage.
The Premier's opened the door on a new COVID-19 direction, one that involves living with the virus rather than keeping it out.
This is really important that we unite Queenslanders, but we do it in the safest way.
By November 19, 70% of Queenslanders are expected to be fully vaccinated. Travellers can then come from a declared hotspot only by air and home quarantine. But first they have to be double dosed and have returned a negative test within the previous 72 hours. By December 17, Queensland should hit the 80% milestone. Then travellers will be able to cross the borders by car or air, and there'll be no need to quarantine, so long as they're fully vaccinated and have a negative test, which means Christmas reunions are on the cards.
I was just ecstatic. It's just so nice to know that I can go home and spend Christmas with my friends and family.
We have to reunite families.
This will give people some certainty.
But December 17 will also see federal government support for businesses turned off.
Once we reach 80% double dose, there will be no financial support, even if your particular community has to go into lockdown.
The easing of restrictions could come earlier if Queensland's vaccination rate speeds up.
If you want it to be sooner than the 17th of December, get vaccinated now.
Currently, 72.5% of Queenslanders have had their first dose. 56.9% are fully vaxxed, but rates are lagging among people aged 20 to 30. 584,000 of them, 15% of the eligible population, remains unvaccinated.
You can open up Queensland to Australia. It is in your hands.
Regional communities have also been urged to roll up their sleeves.
The Gold Coast and Cairns and Mackay and Whitsunday, they need to lift their vaccination rates if you want tourism to come into those regions.
The days of zero COVID cases are numbered. Everyone will eventually be exposed.
Don't be the person who's not vaccinated, because you'll be the person who gets COVID.
According to modelling by the QIMR Berghofer Institute, the worst case scenario would see a peak of 1,200 cases a day in Queensland and 400 patients in ICU, sometime next year.
I'm absolutely confident we will be able to cope.
While Queensland opens up, life for the unvaccinated will become more confined.
There are venues that you can go to now if you're unvaccinated that you won't be able to go to after the 17th of December.
And there'll be no going back.
That December 17 is locked in.
Sally Eales, ABC News.
And state political reporter Rachel Rieger joins us now. Rach, this could be a real test for a COVID-free state, couldn't it?
Definitely, Matt. So this means that Queensland is the first state without COVID unchecked in the community to release a detailed roadmap on how it plans to reopen to COVID hotspots when we reach those vaccine milestones. So really, all eyes will be on Queensland, especially from those other states. Now, this comes after growing pressure from businesses, from the tourism and hospitality industries, from the Australian Medical Association of Queensland, and also from residents who have been stranded interstate for the government to release a plan on what the plan is going forward. So also what this will provide is hopefully a boost to Queensland's lagging vaccination rates and to provide an extra incentive to help combat hesitancy.
And Rach, now that the date is set, how does the government intend to make this happen?
Yes, well, this plan is all about vaccination rates. That really is the key. So the Premier says that will continue to be her focus moving forward. This afternoon, she held a teleconference with dozens of mayors from across the state on how to boost those regional vaccination rates, which are really lagging. We're also going to see a blitz across the state from government ministers. They're going to go out and try and encourage people to come forward and get the jab.
All right, thank you. Rachel Rieger there at Parliament House. So now the work begins, lifting vaccination rates to hit those thresholds, an even bigger task in regional areas. But authorities say lockdowns may still occur in communities with low coverage. Here's state political reporter Kate McKenna.
Overwhelmed with emotion, it's been a long time coming for Susie Jobbins, who's been trying to relocate to Queensland from COVID-stricken Victoria.
We don't have an income coming in right now. You know, we're paying Airbnbs with no income with 2 young children.
But it's still not soon enough.
They've got a plan. It's still a whole month away.
For the Gold Coast tourism sector, there's elation.
It does give a guide and it does give added certainty that we didn't have just a day ago.
Really excited and hopefully looking forward to a bit of a normality in life and in business.
Authorities are hoping the news will be the incentive to boost lagging vaccination rates, especially in regional areas. A prime example, empty chairs at this Mackay vaccination hub this afternoon.
There has been a bit of hesitancy in Mackay. I think the people just have to overcome that fear to help others.
Federal data released today reveals the latest snapshot of vaccination rates for people aged 15 and over. In the Bowen Basin area, just 33.3% are fully vaccinated. In the state's far north, it's not much higher, at 36.7%. That includes the Indigenous community of Yarrabah, which has 22.7% double dose. Health officials aware of the big task ahead.
I think it would be quite adventurous to say that Yarrabah would be ready within that time frame.
There's an added incentive. Communities with low vaccination rates could face future restrictions, even if the state average hits 70 and 80%.
If we have an outbreak, a big outbreak, for example, it could be in central Queensland, they may have to go into a lockdown. Then they will be on restrictions and there'll be no federal government support. So it is urgent that we get our vaccination rates up right across the board.
A blunt call to arms to not be left behind. Kate McKenna, ABC News.
ABC data analyst Casey Briggs joins me now. Casey, how likely is it we're going to hit the targets on the dates that the Premier mentioned?
Yeah, hi Matt. I think there's a pretty good chance that Queensland will get there earlier. What we're looking at the moment is that Queensland has 58.8% of the population double dosed already. We're past 70% on first doses, so that target will be met, no problems whatsoever. The speed at which you get to 80% will then kind of partly determine how quickly that threshold is met. But why might it happen a bit quicker? Well, a few reasons. One, as AstraZeneca vaccines get phased out of the vaccine mix, that is the one that has the longest interval between doses. So as Pfizer and Moderna get used increasingly as a greater share of doses, that window between first and second doses should shrink. Secondly, we've seen interstate where freedoms, where restrictions are eased, specifically tied to jab numbers. In this case, family reunions over Christmas and perhaps even earlier, well, that is a motivating factor for people to go and get the jab quickly. And thirdly, this timeline to get to open up and allow people to come into the state without quarantine at 80%, well, that is basically a determination that at 80%, Queensland will allow this virus to circulate in the community. And so if you're unprotected in Queensland, well, you want to get protected as quickly as possible. There are some things, of course, that we need to see overcome, and that is some of the jab numbers that we've been looking at. They've been flat for a little while, perhaps even declining on first dose numbers. We want to see that speed up particularly and happen soon. Hopefully things like the Bunnings experiments, getting clinics out into the community, making it easier to get the jab, will speed things along. And this is a big step for Queensland to make today, to outline these targets. We've seen, states with active outbreaks, New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT, outline how they'll live with this virus in the coming months and beyond. Queensland is the first state without an active outbreak to put in some firm targets and some firm timelines for allowing the virus into the community, which is a significant state for, a state that's only recorded about 2,000 infections through this entire pandemic. When you look at that per capita, it's near the bottom, well, it is at the bottom of the list of all the states and territories, and just 7 deaths, and most of those, Matt, were cruise ship passengers last year. So this will be a significant step to take for Queensland. I'm sure many other states will be watching to see how this works and if they'll adopt similar looking plans for themselves. A significant moment in Queensland's management of the pandemic.
All right, Casey, thank you. That's Casey Briggs. Queenslanders will be able to return from Tasmania from 1 a.m. tomorrow without going into quarantine after the Apple Isle ended its snap 3-day lockdown a short time ago. All but 6 of the 170 close contacts of an infectious man who breached hotel quarantine last week have now tested negative.
But there remains a small risk that we haven't actually got absolutely everybody identified who had some kind of contact with this case. So I think we have to be very vigilant for the next week.
68% of Tasmania's adult population is fully vaccinated. A Queensland police officer accused of helping his daughter breach the state's COVID-19 border restrictions has appeared in court. Senior Constable Robert William Eichenloff was charged with misconduct in public office last month after he allegedly escorted Madison Eichenloff across the Queensland-New South Wales border on the Gold Coast while he was on a police motorbike and in uniform. Court documents allege Mr Eichenloff assisted the 20-year-old through the Currumbin checkpoint, allowing her to evade interception by officers. She did not have a valid border pass and was fined more than $4,000. The case will return to court next month.